Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Yes, it's Friday. Any given minute to minute today,
What day is now?
what day is now? Exactly. Because, you know, holidays in the middle of the week tend to do that to a person. So it is Friday, which means it's a tutorial tonight, and it's a new tutorial as well, which I'm very excited about because I keep trying to put new tutorials on and everything in life keeps getting in the way. So we're doing a new tutorial tonight. We're doing the woven wire eye ring, which is fun. I haven't done a woven wire tutorial in a while. So let's talk about the tools and materials we need to keep Heather from dying on the other side of the screen. You're going to need 2 feet of 20 gauge wire in the metal of your choice. I'm using bronze tonight. You're going to need about 6 feet of 24 or 26 gauge wire, again, in the metal of your choice. I'm also using bronze for this. If your hands have trouble with wire weaving and with pulling wire, you definitely want to go with the 26, which is a little thinner, over the 24, which is a little bit thicker. And you're going to need one 8mm bead. You can use a smaller or a larger bead if you want. I would say this project probably maxes out at about 10mm, because when you're making a ring, you have to remember that your bead's a sphere, so the taller it is, the taller it's going to sit off your finger. It's going to be a little awkward. So I would say anywhere from 6mm to 10mm is a good range. As far as tools, you are going to need a ring mandrel, so you can check your size, and then you're going to need your basic 3 wire wrapping tools. That is going to be a wire cutter, a round nose plier, and a chain nose plier. And that should be it, but if I have forgotten anything, I promise I will tell you as soon as I remember that I have forgotten it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start this project. I'm going to start by taking my 2 feet of wire, and I'm just going to cut it in half. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to work the center part of the ring, the center back part of the ring, aka the shank. Hi Corvus, how are you? Was there not supposed to be a stream today? I don't remember.
There was supposed to be. That was yesterday, Corvus.
Oh, yes, that was yesterday. That is true. But I mean, who knows? Because there was not supposed to be a stream last Saturday, and yet Heather and I had one anyway, because apparently we are creatures of habit. So I've got my 2 pieces of 20 gauge wire, each of which is about 1 foot long. That is definitely a lot of extra. You don't really need that much. However, once you've made this ring, and if you find you're wasting a lot of wire, you can always just change your amounts. Okay, and then my 24 gauge or 26 gauge, I'm using 24 because I couldn't find the 26. So I'm going to use about 4 feet of it. I might regret that later. I might wish I had used 6 feet, but for now we're going to go with 24.
4 feet.
4 feet.
24 gauge.
24 gauge. The supply list says 6 feet. So once again, I might be regretting this 4-foot choice. I don't think I will, but you never know. Okay, so we've done this weave before on stream. It's called the over weave, or at least that's what I was taught it was called. I've actually seen it called a couple of different things on the internet. So I'm going to start with my 2 pieces of 20 gauge wire held parallel, and I don't want to start at the end. I want to start a couple of inches in. I'm going about 3 inches in from the end. And when I start with my weaving wire, I want to leave a tail that's about 8 inches or so long, because what we're going to do is we're going to work the shank of the ring, and then we're going to add the coiling and decorative bits at the end. So we want to make sure that we have enough wire to do that. So I've got my tail of about 8 to 10 inches, and then I've got my wire. So I'm just going to start. And as with almost anything, starting's the hardest part. So I'm going to wrap my wire around my bottom, and then I'm going to wrap my wire around my top piece. So rather than just coiling my wires together with that thinner wire, what I have is I've got a distinct wrap around here, and then go up and wrap around your top one. And then you're going to go down, and I like to separate the wire with my finger, and then wrap around the bottom one, and you've got to pull this nice and tight. If you don't, I guarantee you it's going to look terrible, and it's not going to have the structure that it needs. Now I'm trapped in my own wire, by the way. That's something that happens more often than you might think it does. But if you don't pull really tight with this, your piece is not only not going to look good, it's not going to have enough structure to be a ring or anything else for that matter. So I was around the bottom. Now I'm going to go to the top, and I really like to escape from my wire. Cool. And I'm going to go around. So I'm around the top one. See how this is really loose? So I'm going to yank on that really hard, and I'm going to make that tight. Then I'm going to go around and around the bottom one. See, aren't you glad that you paid attention to your notifications, Corvus? And again, pull it nice and tight, and then up and around the top. And then around the bottom. So the thing that is a little confusing to some people when doing this weave is that you don't ever cross through the middle of these two wires, in terms of you don't ever go, bottom through, top through. That's a different weave. This one, there are no wires actually crossing through the center except for the wraps themselves. So I'm going to go around and around and around and around. Okay, so that's your over weave. Now, every once in a while, if you want, which I am choosing to do, you can take your weaves and you can kind of squish them together with a chain nose to get rid of any residual space in between. This is not the angle at which I normally do my wire weaving, so my weaving is not as nice and tight and neat as I would like it to be, but that's life. And you want to make sure, this is another reason you want to make sure you pull tight, because I didn't pull tight here, and see how now all of a sudden my wires are kind of splaying out. So I'm just going to take that back over here for a second, fix that at my normal focal distance, if I can. Just give me a second to get myself back on track. Okay, so I didn't fix it entirely, but at least it's better. Okay, so here we are. So you can definitely see my little bobble here, my little imperfection, where my wires started to splay out and then I brought them back in together. So I'm just going to keep doing this until I have essentially the majority of my ring woven. So this is going to be the shank. So that's going to take up about all of your, ring, aside from, it's going to be about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch if you're using an 8mm bead. So if you want to if you want to make, say, a size 7, then you're going to need to weave this to where it's almost a size 7, just shy like 1/4 of an inch. You do need to bear in mind that if you're using a bigger bead, it's going to sit up higher from your fingers, so you don't necessarily need to add more or leave more length for that bead, because it's going to be the same no matter what size bead you're using. So how was everybody's 4th? I'm assuming nobody got their fingers blown off. Or if they did, I'm assuming they're probably not here on the stream right now. I am lucky that no one in my cul-de-sac is a fireworks setting off dumbass, so all there were in my neighborhood were distant explosions rather than right close-up explosions. Also definitely some gunshots. So, Elton,
well, I would hope you'd have a quiet 4th one.
Yes, I would imagine so. I mean, if people are setting off fireworks and shooting guns, and, well, first of all, aren't the gun laws in Canada much stricter than us in the U.S.? Like, saner and all? But yes, I would expect that to be quiet. But so Elton stayed out last night until 2 a.m. So he was out during the whole hoot nanny. And for some reason this morning, he didn't want to go out. I think it was maybe a little too much hoot nanny for his little kitty brain.
Too many hoots.
Too many hoots. Much less nanny.
Pretty sure the entire world has guns there.
Fair. So I will say that on my sample, which is the one that was pictured on the internet, I used 26 gauge wire. I would definitely recommend that for this rather than 24. I'm having much more difficulty pulling the 24 tight. And I do not have weak sauce hands. So
I second that.
So I definitely think that, especially if you want a really even, tight weave here, I would definitely recommend 26 gauge. However, I cannot I cannot find this spool of 26 gauge bronze. So therefore, we use what we have on hand. I did that the other day when I made meatballs, because I do the straight up 1950s like chili sauce and jam or jelly for my meatballs, because it's like my favorite thing ever. And it's supposed to be grape jelly, but I didn't have any, so I used apricot instead. It was quite good. Yes. Because I think the thing is, you just need something that's sweet, but not cloyingly sweet. Though, I mean, I guess the argument could be made that grape jelly is cloyingly sweet. You just need something sweet that's going to melt down and mix with the chili sauce and make a yummy sauce that tastes like my childhood. Anytime my mom had a party, it was chili sauce and jelly for the meatballs, and then there was another one she had for the cocktail sausages. That was different. And never were the two interchanged, ever. Because one was the meatball sauce and one was for the cocktail franks. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to check my size. Partly because I'm getting a little tired of this 24 gauge wire, and partly because I think I'm getting close. So I want to do a size 7. That's my plan. So I'm just going to take this woven wire bit that I have made, and I'm going to wrap it around my mandrel, and I'm going to see how close I am. And I'm very close. So I just need a little bit more weaving. So we're going to go ahead and just do a little bit more weaving. I wish I could remember what the cocktail frank sauce was. It's something equally 1950s as chili sauce and jelly. So this Corvus is bronze wire that I'm using, and for the base, the two I'm weaving around, I'm using 20 gauge, and the choice that I'm regretting right now is that the one that I'm weaving with is 24 gauge, and I really, really wish that I had grabbed 26 gauge instead, because it is... I know, but it has to be here somewhere.
It has to be, unless you took it home to make assembly.
I think so, but that's always a possibility. So the 24 is a lot harder to get a neat looking wrap, so my wrap here is much more organic than the wrap on the sample, which was made with 26 gauge. Also, bronze is tougher wire than, say, gold filled or sterling silver or copper. Again, if you're just starting out, especially if you have hand issues, I highly recommend starting with copper. I do, because you are just going to have a much better experience with the wire, and it's going to lead to you being able to learn the techniques much better. Okay, so that should about do it. So that's my woven bit. So now I'm going to prepare for doing my decorative element and adding my stone. So I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to coil about 5/8 of an inch on this wire, and then about 5/8 of an inch, excuse me, on the other wire. So I'm going to show this on the face cam because I think the hand cam's zoomed in a little bit more. So, alright, so I'm going to coil, just straight coil on a single wire on this one here and this one here. Okay, so see how they're opposites? Oh, where's your sister's sauce? That's funny. So, if bronze is going to turn green, it's probably going to be sweat. That does it. Okay, so I'm going to start on this side, and I'm just going to coil on this wire here. So instead of weaving now, I'm just wrapping a single coil around this wire. But what typically happens to me with bronze when I sweat is it turns my skin black. Copper is the one that turns green, usually. So again, I'm just making single coils around a single wire, trying to pull them all tight. Well, and also how the metal reacts with skin, especially when sweating, is really very dependent on the individual's chemistry. Like, I have very acidic skin, and so what tends to happen to me is I will wind up with shiny metal and black skin because my uh, chemistry essentially polishes metal when I'm wearing it. But some people are the opposite. Some people will wind up with black metal and nothing on their skin. So, it's always an adventure. Okay, so I'm just continuing to coil. So, Corvus, how was the 4th of July and the Fruit Bowl? Also notice I've moved my grip, keep moving my grip, but the closer you hold to the point where you're coiling, the nicer your coils are going to be. You can see how they kind of even out here at the end. They were a little wonkety right there. So that's about my 5/8 of an inch. Now I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to do the opposite wire. So this one is on this side. I'm now going to coil the wire that's on the other side, so this side. So I'm going to be coiling this wire and I'm going to try and do about the same number of coils. We're going to see if I can make this a better thing. That's cool. Somewhere in my house there is a container, or not a container, but a box of sparklers I got for New Year's last year, and I used one of. I cannot for the life of me find it. 110 degrees, holy moly. Yeah, it was hot. I don't think it was that hot here, but it was hot here yesterday too. So I celebrated by not leaving my air-conditioned house. And I was very happy with that choice. Because, ugh, no, thank you. Super gross. Super gross. Not go watch any fireworks. I will say, my first apartment in Dallas that I lived in for about 8 years. You actually see the fireworks from the window, and I got super spoiled. And now I don't want to go anywhere with mosquitoes and stuff to watch fireworks. If I can't see them from my window, I don't care. Wow. Well, at 110 degrees, I think that would be, if you're going to have a water balloon fight, I feel like that's a good temperature for it. Alright, so I'm just continuing to coil. Good job, Corvus. I think we'll just call that a happy accident. Okay, so now I've got my coiling there and there. Okay, so I've got coiling, single coiling, then my weave, then the rest of my single coiling. Now, I'm not going to cut these coiling wires off quite yet, despite the fact that they're a bit of a pain. I'm going to take this really long one, and I'm going to cut it down to about 3 inches. So I actually, my 4-foot estimate was still an overestimate, so that's good to know. So I'm going to take this woven piece. I'm going to wrap it around my mandrel, at my size 7, just to get a basic shape. Okay, so I've got my basic shape. So now what I need to do is I need to add my bead. So what's going to happen is the bead is going to get anchored here and here. And we're going to do that with a separate piece of 24 gauge wire. So I'm just going to cut myself a piece that's about 3 or 4 inches long. And I'm just going to anchor it here by wrapping it around a couple times. And then I'm going to find my bead. Then I'm going to put my bead on. Yes, green tiger eye. Okay, and then I'm going to anchor this on the other side. And what I just want to make sure of when I'm putting this on is that I've got a coiled and an uncoiled on one side of the bead and a coiled and an uncoiled on the other side. So you don't want to accidentally anchor this with all 4 wires on one side. So then I'm going to take this across and I want it to be fairly tight. So I don't want any space other than what is being given by the bead. And then I'm going to wrap that around here. Yeah, I was looking in one of our miscellaneous stone cups and it kind of jumped out and said, "Hey, you should use me." And I said, "Okay, you're pretty. I'll use you." And again, there's the whole pulling thing. Make sure you pull it nice and tight so that there's no space, again, other than what the bead itself is creating. And here's just a little secret, is these areas that you're anchoring on right now, they're going to be covered up by your other wires, so if they don't look super neat, it's okay. So I'm going to trim that anchor, and I just want to press it down so that it's not like going to stab anybody, even though it is going to be covered. It's never a bad idea to make sure you don't have stabby bits. And then this is the first anchor point, and do the same thing. Now we can take this, slide it back on our mandrel, which is just going to make it a little easier for us to hold. In theory, totally missed the trash can. Oops. Okay, so I've got it on my mandrel, and now what's going to happen, and once again, I still have my coiling wires here. I am going to cut them off in a minute, but what's going to happen is we're going to bend our wires around to make that eye shape. So I think I have more than enough coils. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these little bits because they're annoying me. Trim that one. Trim also this one. And then back onto the mandrel to just kind of do a little bit more pulling and shaping. And ideally what I want, see, my wires have gotten a little mixed up here, so I'm going to back it off, and I'm going to make sure that the uncoiled wire goes on the outside of the coiled wire, which means I'm going to have to manipulate that a little bit with my fingers to make sure that that makes a slightly bigger curve just does not want to, but makes a slightly bigger curve than the coiled wire. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both of those wires and I'm going to wrap them around my ring shank. Now, right now I've got about 3 inches. That's a little bit too long because it needs to actually be able to pass through my ring shank in order for me to anchor it. So I cut it off and then I'm going to go through, and don't be afraid to grab a pliers to help you because this is a lot of wire. Ouch. And so we're going to wrap that around the shank, and you will notice that my ring at this point has gotten pretty misshapen. That's okay. We will fix that in a minute. So I'm going to do it on the other side as well. So I'm going to curve my coiled one around, and then I'm going to take my plain one and I'm just going to go around the outside of it like so, so that I can really see those 2 layers. And then I'm going to trim them. And then again, wrap around and through. And don't forget, you can use the pliers to help you with that. In fact, you should. Not just you can, but you ought to. I'll help you pull those wires through. And again, we're going to anchor those around the shank of our ring. And you don't need to go too many times around. Like I literally just went under and over with my anchors, and that's fine. Then you're going to go ahead and trim them, and then press your ends down one at a time with a little twist so that they just sort of nestle in among all the coiled stuff that's already there. So what you want is it shouldn't feel rough or sharp. And you can just do the same thing on the other side. And then we're going to take this really wonky looking ring at this point. Like, okay, first of all, ow, and that's not right. So let's fix this. Okay, less ow. So we're going to take this really misshapen looking ring and we're going to put it on our mandrel. And we're just going to kind of slide it down our mandrel and reshape it into a circle. Make sure that everything is flat. Make sure that our eye is looking the way that we want it to look. And when we pull it off the mandrel, there's another ouchie. This is one thing you do have to be really vigilant about when you're doing woven wire things is your ends. Because it's really very, very easy to forget about an end, and then all of a sudden you've got somebody who has stabbed themselves on one of your creations and is super pissed at you. So really take your time, do your wire ends properly, and make sure that everything is tucked in, tucked down, you know, tucked anywhere it needs to be, just like a good drag show. So that no one's going to stab themselves on it. I'm just doing a little bit of final end tucking and manipulation with my pliers. I did manipulate a little bit to get those flat wires, not those flat wires, but those uncoiled wires on the outside. And there you go. That's it. That is our woven wire eye ring. Once again, if I had done this with 26 gauge wire, it would have been much neater. So I would definitely make that change for sure the next time I do this. And yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's fun. I like it. I see you. I see you all. So, all right. So yeah, thank you. That's it. That is our project for this evening. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me on the Beading Dream stream. Mary requested a Zoom tomorrow, so I think that is what we're going to do. So we will send out that email, and of course you can always find the link for Zoom in the Zoom channel of our Discord. If you're not a member of our Discord, you should join. Just type !Discord for the making it look fast. It is fast and simple. It's not a super complicated project, Torvis. And then it can just stare at people. So there we go. Thank you, Corvus. So if you're not part of our Discord, please join our Discord. There's a channel there for Zoom. You can get the Zoom link. That'll be starting tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And then we are going to try some new things when we do freeforms in the future. If Heather and I are both here, we're going to try playing some games for you.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be fun. But for tomorrow night, we will be on Zoom. That means we will not be on Twitch. We will not be on Facebook. We will not be on YouTube. But we will be on Zoom starting at 6:30 p.m. Ish, Central Time. And we'll hang out until about 8 or a little bit after. And I think that's going to be it. So everyone have a great night. And we will hopefully see all of your smiling faces on Zoom tomorrow. So everyone have a good night, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Bye!